We're going to solve these next two examples using something called U substitution. If you plan to take calculus, you will see U substitution again. It's really handy in further math classes. Okay, example 1. Solve y squared minus 5 all squared plus 2 times y squared minus 5 plus 1 equals 0. Okay, this looks really messy and terrible, but it's not quite that bad because notice we have something squared plus 2 times something plus 1. This is the same thing as that. Like if we just replace all our parentheses with a u, we know how to deal with this. I guess I should still have it equal to 0. But we know how to deal with this. We know how to solve quadratics. And this is just a basic quadratic if you take out that messy junk in your parentheses. Let's replace it with a u. Okay, how do you solve a quadratic? You can factor, you can use quadratic formula, you can complete the square. Your choice, however you want to do this one. I'm going to factor because that is quick to me. So there's nothing in front of this u squared or it's implied to be a 1. So I can just think, okay, what two numbers multiply to 1 and add to 2? Well, 1 times 1 and 1 plus 1. Okay, set both of your factors equal to 0. I only have to do it once because it's just repeated factor. And you'll get that u is equal to -1. So when I solve this red equation, I get -1 as my answer. But the red equation was a simplified version of the original equation. So now we have to do a little extra step. We made that first equation super simple by putting u's in instead of parentheses, but what was in our parentheses to begin with? A y squared minus 5. And we replaced that whole set of parentheses with a u. So let's set y squared minus 5 equal to -1. We're going to unreplace the u. Okay, let's solve for y. So add your 5 over to the other side and take the square root. Whenever you square root something that does not originally have a square root in it, that means you have to include the positive and the negative answer. And that's it. If I subbed in a 2 back into this original equation for my y's, or if I subbed in a -2 back into this original equation for my y's, I'd have it equal to 0, and we did it. So it seems really messy, but you just try and break it down and rewrite it as a quadratic and solve. And then whatever you had to tweak and change and replace with a u to get it into quadratic formula, you'll replace it and solve. Let's do another example. The other way you'll see this. So generally you're going to see parentheses squared, and so whatever's in your parentheses is what you have to replace down here in this last step. Or you're going to see x to the 4th and x squareds. So this one's not quite as obvious, but we can still handle that. What we want to do is replace, we have a bigger exponent here, so we want to replace the smaller exponent with just a u. So this is 6u. Okay, well how do u equals x squared, but this is x to the 4th, so 4th from squared, if I square a squared, I get a 4th power. Okay, let's solve this quadratic because now it's just a basic quadratic. We can factor, we can use the quadratic formula, or we can complete the square. If you want to factor or use the quadratic formula, you have to get it equal to 0, so I need to add my 8 over to the other side. I'm going to factor because that's quicker for me. Okay, what two numbers can I think of multiply to +8 and add to -6? And then set each one equal to 0 and solve. Okay, so this more simplified red equation solves out to be 4 and 2. But that's not what the original equation is, so now I need to do my replacement and figure out what everything was. What did I originally replace? Well, x squared got replaced with a u. So x squared equals 4 and x squared equals 2. All right, now let's solve both of these. I need to take the square root. There wasn't originally a square root in this problem, so that means that I need a plus or minus. The square root of 4 is 2, plus or minus 2. All right, what about this one? I need to square root it. The square root of 2 isn't a nice pretty whole number, so I'm going to leave it as a square root, but don't forget your plus or minus in front. And there we go. So for u substitution, try and find a way to rewrite it as a quadratic, solve your quadratic, and then you'll have to say, well, what did I actually replace my u's with? Sub it back in and solve.